Welcome back. We turn now to the latest on the mass drug suspensions rocking Major League Baseball. Yankee slugger Alex Rodriguez made his season debut in Chicago last night, vowing to fight his ban.
Alex Rodriguez.
Booed by angry fans, A-Rod stepped to the plate overnight in Chicago under a cloud of suspicion and with a 211-game suspension hanging over his head.
A-Rod gets a single on his first at bat.
The highest paid player in baseball attempted to deflect questions about the controversy.
It was a hard day today. You know, from this moment on, I want to focus on baseball and, play every game like as do or die.
After days of speculation, the three-time MVP was finally suspended by the league yesterday, benched through the end of the 2014 season. It's a potentially career-ending punishment that came after allegations Rodriguez used performance-enhancing drugs, then lied to baseball during its investigation.
Has been a nightmare.
12 other players accepted drug deal suspensions and are now forced to sit out 50 games apiece. But A-Rod reportedly refused the deal and now says he'll appeal the suspension, although he wouldn't explain why.
If you didn't use PEDs in this recent, why don't you just say it?
There'll be an opportunity to do all of that. I don't think that time is right now.
Until an arbitrator rules on the appeal, Rodriguez is still in the game, but his alleged behavior has disappointed many fans.
And he's just drawing more and more attention to the Yankees in a negative manner.
He deserves it.
Still, even with his future now up in the air, crowds are clamoring for a piece of A-Rod. And for more, we are joined now by Ed Schauder. He is the chairman of the Sports and Entertainment Group at Sikenzia. I probably messed that up. Ross Friedman Ferentz LLP. Was I close?
Perfect.
I got your name right. That's all that matters. So tell Ed, why is A-Rod fighting this, and do you think he's smart to do it?
I actually do. This is completely a money play. From a simple standpoint of trying to maximize the value of his contract, by fighting the suspension now, he's actually saving close to $3 million. He makes more in 2013 than he will make in 2014. By the time the appeal process plays itself out, even if they tack on the suspension, don't reduce it, he's actually saving money by making this move.
So it's money and not necessarily focused on elongating his career or playing as long as he can.
Well, you know, how long he could play is dependent on how well he recovers from injury.
Here's the part of this that I don't get. The collective bargaining agreement, first time you're found guilty of taking performance-enhancing drugs, it's a 50-game suspension. Alex Rodriguez hasn't tested positive for anything yet. They might have other evidence, but he hasn't tested positive for it. Doesn't the union deal sort of require him to be suspended for only 50 games?
It's an interesting point. 36 pages of the most fascinating reading you'll ever see. 50 games for the first suspension, 100 games for the second. How do you get to 212 or 211? I mean, clearly baseball feels that they have something on him. The fact that the other players all accepted deals seems to suggest that, that Bosch had some credibility. Here there's evidence that none of us have really seen or know about. So rather, I was surprised that the commissioner didn't invoke the best interest of baseball clause. They've used it so many times in the past, if they really have the evidence. So that's another reason why A-Rod's fighting, because it seems to run afoul from the basic agreement that they negotiated.
Is this the kind of thing that gets settled in a courtroom, or is it with the arbitrator, with the collective bargaining agreement and the union deal?
Well, I believe it's going to go to arbitration. There's an arbitrator that's already been picked. A-Rod lawyered up. He has David Cornwell, who successfully represented Ryan Braun and was able to just find a little chain of evidence issue over here. Next thing you know, there's no suspension at all. Another reason why I think it's a smart move on A-Rod to try to fight this at this point in time. He got absolutely nothing to gain by accepting the suspension. There's rumors abound that they offered him a deal that after the suspension, 80-game suspension, he would retire with pay. That's not what he wants.
And just to clarify for people who might not know, the Ryan Braun suspension is from last year when he tested positive, not this year when he admitted to it.
Correct.
And took the suspension for the rest of the season. Finally, if A-Rod wins this appeal, what's the impact or the potential impact on the other people who have already agreed to be suspended, or going forward, other potential suspensions for other potential violations?
Well, here you're talking about 13 players, 12 of whom have cut deals. So it's over for them. They've accepted the suspension. There's no appeal process. Some of them have admitted that they did wrong. You know, it's always vague references. You know, they made mistakes in judgment, and I apologize. I want to regain trust and everything like that. The A-Rod process, it's going to be interesting to find out what he ultimately says on this subject. Because the one thing in all the statements he's made, he's never admitted that he hasn't done it. He's never said that he has.
I want to bring everybody into this now, because with the A-Rod deal, I'm wondering, does it even matter how this all plays out in terms of whether he's suspended now or next year or ever plays again? Or has the damage already been done in terms of public opinion, public image, endorsements?
The damage certainly has already been done to his reputation. But a question that I have, in this arbitration process, do you think, one, I wonder, does Major League Baseball really have the goods, one? And two, do you think A-Rod is going to have to fess up in this process to using these drugs?
Well, I think the proof that they have the goods is the fact that everybody else voluntarily accepted their suspension. So we don't know what the goods are. We don't know what the evidence is. You hear innuendos. And the one thing I'm careful about as a lawyer is never jump to conclusions. But apparently they must have something that 12 other Major League Baseball players immediately accepted suspension, including one that was Ryan Braun, who was a very big proponent of his innocence, only to then kind of cave in and say, yeah, I did something wrong, I'll accept the penalty. The one thing is, all these other players, though, their salaries pale in comparison to A-Rod. They're at the beginning part or middle part of their career. A-Rod's at the tail end. He has a lot more to lose.
Almost a certainty that the suspension won't last, right? I mean, the full suspension that has come down, the full 200-plus games. With an arbitrator, it's almost certain that's not going to stand, right?
I'd be surprised if the full suspension was to stand. You know, I think at the end of the day, he gets a minimum of at least 50 games. But even though he's never failed a test, and that could very well be because he's publicly admitted that he took the PEDs in the past.
When he goes through arbitration, if he loses, so to speak, it ends up with the full next year out type thing. Could the commissioner also step in and say, in the best interest of baseball, that's it, you're done too? Because you pushed it and he threatened that before?
I think it depends on how the process plays out. You know, A-Rod's been prone to say a lot of silly things, and the commissioner always has that card in his pocket. Now, whether or not he would use it again.
That wouldn't be double jeopardy, though?
There's no, you know, this is not really the United States. It's not really a court system, right? Baseball, they have the antitrust protection. They kind of govern their own. It's a self-regulatory body.
And that's actually what happened in the Black Sox scandal back in 1919. They were acquitted in court, but then the commissioner came in and kicked everybody out permanently. How much of this do you think is because of who A-Rod is, and how much of it is because of what he allegedly did?
I think, look, A-Rod is a lightning pole. He's one of these divisive characters in sports. You either love him, hate him. Sometimes you can love him and hate him. So a lot of it has to do with who A-Rod is, but a lot of it also has to do with the fact that he's looked in the television cameras in the past. He says he hasn't done anything, and then it was proven that he did. You know, the other thing is, it's a fascinating story. There's so many elements to this. Does the Player Association stand up and defend him, even though most of the members want PEDs eliminated and don't want to get involved? You know, A-Rod used a sentence yesterday that was amazing. He says he's fighting for his life here. Well, the head of the Players Association, Mike Weiner, is fighting for his life. And this is not a headache that Mike Weiner wants to undertake at this point in time. So A-Rod has a tendency sometimes to suffer from a little foot-in-the-mouth disease. And sometimes he'll say things that really aren't appropriate at any given point in time. And he actually may have had a deal had he not done this the other night when he addressed the media in Trenton.
Anybody else wondering about the commissioner himself getting off easy on this, only because he's been the commissioner throughout the entire steroid era, hasn't done anything to stop it? Now all of a sudden he's the tough guy, he's the sheriff on the beat?
That's a great point. I mean, this is a commissioner who presided over 1998. As a baseball fan, who didn't get into the whole thing with Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire? It saved the game. So they all knew. I mean, and that's one of the things that people think A-Rod may have been alluding to when he says that, you know, when this story comes out, who knows what the Yankees knew and what they didn't know. The one thing for sure, though, is, again, it's bottom line, it's about the money. If there's a way for them to get out of this massive contract right now, they would love to do it. If there's a way for A-Rod to save as much of the contract as possible, he wants to do it.
Finally, and I want to go around the table on everybody, what would you like to see throw the rules, throw this collective bargaining agreement, the union stuff out the window? What would you like to see happen with A-Rod? What do you think's going to happen with A-Rod? Ed, I'll start with you.
You know, I got to tell you, I was one of the biggest A-Rod game use collectors at one point in time. I've met him several times. Charming guy. I lost a lot of faith in him by some of the things that I personally witnessed. Just, you know, not enough time to get into it, but he can be two different people. And I felt personally that he let me down as a collector that invested thousands of dollars with the PEDs and some of the things I saw in the game use industry. So I wish him well. Everybody in this world deserves a second chance, maybe even a third chance. I'd like to see him do well and help the Yankees do well, but he's made his own bed, and I think he's going to sleep in it.
So you'd like to see him back on the field?
I'd like to see him back in the field, but he should also pay a price of some kind, if in fact it's proven that he's done what they say he's done.
Bill?
I mean, I think justice is done in the suspension. I'd love to see the Yankees when he is done with the suspension. I'd love to see them bench him every day for the rest of his contract. Eat the contract to set an example for baseball.
Interesting.
To show young people that baseball still has some principle.
You got more money than I do.
What I was thinking is that in this situation and going forward, there should be able to be an opportunity for the team to decide whether they want to void the contract outright, and then they go back out into the field. Because right now, what you're talking about, Bill, the Yankees have to pay that price, and whether or not that's appropriate for the burden or not. And when he benches him, they then have a situation that it's some other player they can't play if he's on the bench, opposed to some guy coming up. And if he goes to the minor leagues permanently, there's probably something in the contract says if you're thrown to the minor league without a good reason and so forth, he gets the cash out anyway.
But if you void the deal, he could sign with somebody else.
But you let the team decide. In other words, the team can decide, do we want the headaches, do we care? And then they can go back and negotiate like he did when he didn't take the option last time and say, we'll give you $2 million a year, that's it. And let's see what the market will bear then, and brings it back down to reality of what he's worth now, given the injuries, given the steroids. Remember, he was supposed to be having a home run chase and breaking records, and he's nowhere there now.
Given the damage to the Yankees' name.
Yeah.
I mean, he's damaging it every day right now.
Dominic?
You know what's so sad about this whole thing? If A-Rod starts hitting home runs, everyone's going to look the other way and go A-Rod, and the Yankee tickets are going to go up. They sold, what, 25 extra thousand?
3,200 extra tickets.
Extra tickets simply because A-Rod was on the field last night. What's sad about the suspension speaks for itself. What's sad about this is he went 1 for 4 last night, and he barely went 1 for 4. A-Rod's playing days are sayonara. Bye-bye. His best days are gone.
Jeannie?
Well, I have no real love lost for A-Rod, but I do think your question about Major League Baseball, the commissioner, and what the Yankees knew and when is a big one. I don't have as much sympathy for the Yankees losing millions of dollars. Sure, he shouldn't have cheated. We should remove these from the game. But you know what? There were a lot of people complicit in this, not just A-Rod, and I think that needs to be recognized.
And Andrew, fire whoever gave A-Rod this long contract. They're the one that should be penalized.
But he negotiated by himself.
Right.
Ed Schauder, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for letting me join the party.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, though, we turn back to the race for City Hall. Was John Liu's campaign given the equivalent of the death penalty? We'll explain and get the input of some campaign insiders when we return. Stay with us.